Hello, this is Instructor Howard with UMA, and we are breaking down coding cases for BC3020 Week 3. This week we will review the coding exam and abstract some information from the case dealing with radiology coding. And in this example today we are covering interventional radiology, which also gives us a glimpse at what radiology contributes to surgery coding. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so you would need to have a copy of this exam in front of you, your ICD-10 manual, your CPT book, and something to take notes with. First and foremost, we need to put our mouse at the top portion of our page, right click, and let me see, I probably have already done it. Okay, right click and remove content control. In this particular file, I've already done that, so I didn't have to do it today. But if you haven't done yours, make sure you right click, remove content control so that you can highlight and type and change the font as needed for better abstracting. Okay, so our location. The first portion of our test usually gives you some questions related to abstracting. So the first part, or some of the first questions you are going to be getting, is related to the procedure or the test to be coded. But we always want to make sure that we pull out where the location, who the provider is, and in this case it's telling us interventional radiologist. So we will be dealing with radiology procedures today. So this particular examination is a CT guided biopsy. And you may want to have a separate Word document open or type this information out as you go. The reason they're going to do the biopsy today is because the patient has a liver mass. We're going to hold on to this information right here because one thing about diagnostic testing, once the test is completed, then this particular symptom or diagnosis may change. And you'll see how as we go through the case. Now this particular wording in here just describes how the procedure was rendered and everything that the provider did in order to complete the service. So for here, we see basically that they reviewed the mass or reviewed the liver, and they had the patient prepped on the table. And a lot of this information here, from here to here, is invalid because we don't need to review that, or this does not affect how we will code the case. So as we move further down, we see that the provider used a 19 gauge needle, and he identified the lesion where it was, and then he confirmed the needle position prior to biopsy. So this is letting us know that he took a sample. He took a sample of the mass. And when there is a biopsy or a viable sample, it must be reviewed, or is usually sent to the pathologist for further examination to determine if it's cancerous, non-cancerous, benign, or what have you. So what he's saying is for 4 20 gauge core biopsy samples were obtained. Now when we're dealing with the number of samples taken, when there is a surgery, it doesn't matter how many samples he's taken. Okay, so let's see, biopsy samples were contained with a biopsy gun, and then the needle was removed. It's also saying that the patient did not receive conscious sedation and all these other things to let us know that he was stable. So that's invalid. We can cross that out. So pretty much we're just about done abstracting the important portions of our case. where the patient was located, who the provider is, what the short description of the procedure is. Okay, so it's a biopsy. And this will more than likely be our main term when we are searching for it in the CPT index, or CT scan. Either one. I would prefer going to biopsy first and then reviewing what code range or codes that I'm referred to in my reference code. But you can also go to CT scan or computed tomography. That's what this is. Okay, so the impression is that a successful and uncomplicated CT guided biopsy. This makes a difference, and this kind of repeats itself several times. So as you get into reviewing your operative notes and your reports, you're going to see that you have a short description here, you have more detailed description of the procedure in here, and then he follows up with usually his impression or overall impression, conclusion, final diagnosis. All of that right here is pretty much the same as this. And he's just telling us what he did or what he found. So what he did was he sent the samples to the pathologist, and the pathology report later indicated that there is a primary malignancy of the liver. This right here is our diagnosis. This is our main diagnosis. The clinical symptom is the reason for the service, but this no longer has to be coded because it's a symptom. This mass represents a bigger problem. So since this is no longer valid, we don't need to code that. Now we're going to take our attention to the pathology report. Whenever there is a pathology report available, or when you're reviewing an operative note and you see something related to a pathology report, you want to review that for your confirmed or final diagnosis. Sometimes it's one and the same. If this was non-cancerous, it would just be considered a benign neoplasm. Either way it goes, a mass or any type of growth on the tissue is considered a neoplasm when you're dealing with diagnosis coding. So first and foremost, we are going to locate our diagnosis, and then we're going to follow up by locating our procedure. So this is all we need to do right now today at this point. Diagnosis is here, procedure is here, and the procedure may have some more information because it, as you can see, it's CT guided liver biopsy, and we'll get into that after we deal with our diagnosis portion. So to save time, once again, I am reviewing the coding in my electronic ICD-10 or electronic code manual, and electronically this is my neoplasm table. Now for you would go in your alpha index in your ICD-10 manual and go to the ends for the neoplasms or the neoplasm table. So from here or from there, I would search, or we would search alphabetically for the word liver. We have several columns of information. We have primary, which means this is the very first site that this particular person has cancer, or the cancer has appeared in the body. Secondary is if the patient had cancer on a previous time, it was removed, or they had cancer somewhere else and now it's appearing on the liver, then the liver would be considered the secondary site. But since this is the first time the patient has been diagnosed with cancer, this is primary. Any other growths that become cancerous on this person's body from this day forward will always be coded from the secondary, and liver will always be coded from the primary. We have cancer in situ, which was not mentioned. We have benign, uncertain behavior, and unspecified. The provider gave us, or the pathologist told us, that the cancer is primary. And we have a 3-digit category of C22, which represents malignant neoplasm of the liver and intrahepatic bile ducts. And then we have excludes notes, and it's telling us use additional codes to identify. If we do not have any of this information in a scenario, then we don't need to code for that. So what you need to do is start with your 3-digit category and pay attention to all of these other codes here and your guides and your instructional note to make sure you choose the correct code for malignant neoplasm of the liver. And that's pretty much it. That's all you need to do for this scenario for week 3 dealing with diagnosis. Remember, we are no longer going to code the liver mass because the mass has now become cancerous, and we only need to code for the main diagnosis or the main problem. Okay, so we are back at our scenario now that we've abstracted and pulled and have located our main and search term for the diagnosis. We can come back and look at the case again and search for information related to our CPT. We see that we have a biopsy. We see that it is CT guided or computed tomography guided. And we also see that the provider did a biopsy by way of a needle. It tells us here 19 gauge coaxial needle. The reason this wording right here is important is because it explains how the biopsy was rendered. Anything with a needle involved with a procedure, and specifically biopsies, are considered percutaneous. Percutaneously is when the service is done by use of a needle. So the provider did not cut the patient, and that's considered an open surgical procedure. He did not use an endoscopic, or he didn't do it endoscopically, which uses a endoscope and sticking that into the abdominal cavity, because it would explain that here. So we have open procedures, we have endoscopic procedures, and we have percutaneous procedures. This particular procedure is done percutaneously. And we're going to discover why that's important when we begin looking for our codes in the alphabetic index of the CPT. So let's do that now. So in the back of your CPT manual, in the alphabetic index, we have a couple of ways or a couple of search terms in order to locate this procedure. Remember, I said we can start with CT scan or computed tomography, or we can just go to the word biopsy. I am going to go to the word biopsy because that is what actually happened. That's the end result. So when you go in your index, you're going to see it's pretty much just like this. You're going to see the word biopsy. You're going to see various types. You have brush biopsy, and you also have needle biopsy. Now, if you want to continue to search further, we can go until we see the body part. The body part that had a biopsy on today was the liver. Okay, so I see liver and I see several codes. And this is considered reference codes. This right here with a dash in between is considered a range. So we have a few things going on with the liver biopsy. But now, since I've done it this way and I have several reference codes to review, I want to go back and look at what if I chose needle biopsy. Remember, you have various ways of searching for your codes. You want to do the method that is, well, the quickest. Because one thing about sitting for your CPC exam in the near future is that you have to pretty much go through those questions in like 1.5 minutes. So I have a lot of information here related to needle biopsy, and you see it says needle abdomen mass. It's not necessarily giving me the liver, it just says needle here. So I want to go back to search for just the word biopsy in the index. I'm going to go down to the word liver once again, and for you it might be the next page or the next page after. As you can see, there's a long list of body parts that could have a biopsy. You can have a biopsy on any portion of your body. Okay, so I have been referenced to the surgery section. The subsection is the digestive system, and yes, your liver is a part of your digestive system. Another good way of learning anatomy and what organs are inside of a certain system, or all of the other organs that's inside of one particular organ system, is when you do your coding. You'll see how the book is divided. It's always divided anatomically. Okay, so we see where it says incision, and it's telling us biopsy of, biopsy of liver needle percutaneous. We're given this code, percutaneous, which pretty much matches, but we always want to review all of the codes underneath just to make sure that we're not overlooking something. Sometimes this word percutaneous could be behind another code, and this could just say biopsy of the liver needle, or biopsy of the liver, it could be one code here, and then this code here could say, and then underneath, and it could just say percutaneous. And if that was the case, then this code would be more accurate. But in this scenario, we have this one code here, and it's giving us some parenthetical notes here. It's telling us that if imaging guidance is performed, that's why it's important to use your notes. If imaging guidance is performed, then you need to reference to these code ranges as well. So this is the code for the main procedure, and this is your code range that you need to research for your imaging guidance. Was imaging guidance performed today? Yes, it was, because it was a CT guided biopsy. So CT, or computed tomography, or CT scan, is imaging guidance. Ultrasounds are imaging guidance. X-rays, MRIs, all of that is representing as radiology. So I am going to click on, or you turn your page to the radiology section and look at those codes. As you can see, radiology, and then diagnostic ultrasound, ultrasound guidance procedures. Our procedure was done with a CT scan, so this is not the correct code. So what you want to do is you want to review all of these codes to locate the appropriate code for CT guided, or CT guidance, and it's on the same page, and I'm not going to give you that because it's pretty easy to locate that information. So you have abstracted, or you should have abstracted, information related to the service, the type of service that was rendered. Just pay attention to your questions, follow along through your case, and as you code the first 3 portions of your coding exam, you will be better able to answer the actual coding questions related to part 4, which is your coding aspect of it. And if you have any further questions, or if you get stumped on any of this information, feel free to give me a call, text me, email me. I'm more than happy to assist you. So thank you for reviewing, and thank you for struggling with these coding tests and learning coding. It's really fun, it's really easy, and it's very rewarding, as you can see. Here's my phone number, 805-824-0065. You could pretty much text or call me all day, every day. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to answer, but I will definitely respond to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.